How many hours a day do you work? Maybe a better question is, how much hours a day do you need to work in order to be successful? We have people like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, and Mark Zuckerberg that work nonstop. Literally, all they did was wake up, work, eat, and repeat. Some people like Alex Hormozy says 12 hours is the minimum. Some people like Charlie Morgan, they work 10 hours. Cal Newport suggests 4 hours of deep work in his book. So how can we know how much we actually need to in order to be successful? I mean, the cliche would be work hard, work for hours on end, trudging through the mud daily. But is this truly the best way? I mean, sure, working 12 hours a day, trudging through the mud seems masculine and it will get you progress. I'm not denying that. Like, if you do work 12 hours a day, you will make progress. But all I'm saying is there has to be a better way to work, a more efficient way to work. Section 1. What is work? You must understand what work actually means if you want to find an efficient way to work. To simply put it, the idea of work can be put into an equation. Work equals time times leverage times focus. So time seems pretty self-explanatory. That's basically how much time you spend on a task. An hour, 3 hours, 5 hours. Leverage basically means how much output you get relative to your input. All this means is, let's just take an example for you to understand this. Let's say you're working on a website, right? For like a course or whatever, for like a business. And this was like for 5 hours. You were working on the website for 5 hours. This 5 hours will be your input. And let's say for the sake of this hypothetical, the 5 hours of working on your business and working on that website gives you 10 hours worth of progress in your business. This would be the output. And some tasks have higher leverage than others. Highest leverage tasks are usually the ones that are the hardest, but we will cover that in the other sections. Focus is essentially the one that's the reason why we can't work 16 hours a day. Working can be hard. I know, a revolutionary concept. But like, all jokes aside, your brain energy depletes when you're doing mentally demanding tasks such as deep work. When your focus decreases, your output or the work decreases as well. Because when you're not focused, you start stopping every 3 seconds. Your mind is somewhere else, not focused on the task. You start to become zoned out for like 3 minutes at a time. Then you come back, you work for 30 seconds, then you zone out again. So even though you're technically at your desk or whatever you're doing, you're technically doing the work, you're unfocused on said work, and therefore the quality of the work decreases. This essentially means that the first hour of work you do is much more valuable than the 9th hour, because the first hour you were super focused, meaning that you're going to have the highest output, the highest quality output. As we spend more time on the work, our quality of the work and the quality of our output decreases slightly until it's just unsalvageable. Like by like hour 12, you're just really not even doing work at this point. You're just sitting at your desk or doing willy-nilly. You're just dilly-dallying around. Focus really doesn't put a cap on how much you can work, because you can work 16 hours a day. Just eat once and go to sleep, then repeat. But focus does put a cap on how much effective work we can do. So if you want to truly work effectively, you must optimize time, leverage, and focus so you can squeeze as much work out of us. Pause. As much out of us as we possibly can without actually losing progress. Section 2, how to optimize for time. So there's 2 ways to work. There's time work, where you essentially start work at a certain time and you end work at a certain time. Think of like a 9 to 5, right? You start work at 9 a.m. and you end at 5 p.m. It's the same concept. Time productivity, like when I say time productivity or time work, they're the same thing, right? They go hand in hand, right? So time productivity is the most common one. Look at the daily life of a CEO or some BS video like that, and you'll see that they say that they work at this time and then end at this time. When I started doing YouTube like a year ago, I worked like this. I had the notion that I had to work really hard for like hours, but it turns out that after 2 to 3 hours or even 4 hours of actual work, I was done for the day. And the other 4 to 5 hours honestly was bullshit. I wasn't really doing anything like at all for like my YouTube to grow and stuff, right? I was just doing like anything I could that seemed productive. And those things that seemed productive really didn't get me to my goals. Like, it wasn't really progressing me in my goals. It was just like filler work. There's two major problems that I have with time productivity. The first one is that most of the time you're wasting your time at a certain point. Like, let's say you work 10 hours a day, and let's say you want to script and record 2 videos. This will honestly only take you 4 to 5 hours, maybe even 6 to do. So after 4 or 5 or even 6 hours, you're just going to be doing some BS for the rest of the day, because like you want an ego booster, or to tell people and yourself that you worked like X amount of hours. Oh, look at me, I worked 10 hours. When really you could have just stopped at 4 or 5 hours and just saved that energy for tomorrow so you can have quality work, right? It's because people don't understand. It's not impressive. Well, it is impressive, but people aren't going to be like, wow, he worked 10 hours, right? Nobody really cares how much you work. They just care about the results. And if you're not getting the results, they don't care if you work 10 hours or not. It lacks intention for things when you're just doing BS work just to say that you did it. It gives you like a false sense of productivity, pseudo-productivity even. The second thing is that there's a constraint of time which breeds anxiety. Maybe I'm looking into it too much, but whenever I have like a time constraint on something, I get kind of anxious, I'm not gonna lie. And I know if I feel it, there's probably a lot of people that feel the same way. Maybe you do too, and the anxiousness kind of subconsciously makes you rush, and as a result, you'll do a worse job. Think about it like this. You know, in school, when the teacher assigned you an essay or something like 2 weeks in advance and gave you like a whole plan on how to create the essay, how to split it up, blah, 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 right? You do the body paragraph this day, you revise this day, stuff like that. But you being the procrastinator you're like 1 week passes and you're still being retarded and saying, I'll do it later, until it's the day before the deadline. And that sense of urgency makes you spring into action, and it makes you do like a half-ass paper that's just good enough for passing, right? You don't really take the time to really get that A+, because, you know, guess what? You were rushing it. Same thing applies with this. Since you have a constraint of time, let's say 4 hours, you're gonna do this thing. You're gonna have in the back of your mind that you only have 4 hours. And maybe you don't know this, but subconsciously you'll start to rush the process. And this could lead to a drop in quality because you're worried about getting it done rather than taking the time to make it the best you can make it. So these are like the two main problems that I have with time productivity, right? It has a constraint of time which makes you rush, and also it can either make you rush things, or it can just make you do bullshit filler work that's really not, beneficial to your goals. So there has to be a different way, another way for you to work, so you can actually effectively work. And I call it goal work or goal productivity. So goal work is essentially saying that you will continue working until you finish the thing that you have to do, right? Until you finish that daily goal that you have. And then after that, you're done for the day, and you can do not whatever you want, but you can do I'll explain it later, right? So simply switching to a goal work lens kills both of the main problems that time work has. It kills the constraint of time because you're not focusing on the time spent doing the task. You are focusing on completing the task itself. And it also kills that pseudo productivity because you stop once you completed that daily goal. These daily goals, I like to call them Goldilocks goals. The reason I call them Goldilocks goals is because we want these goals to be not too hard where we just end up not completing the goals and the task altogether, but we don't want them to be too easy where we're kind of cheating ourselves and not maximizing our input and output. Now in the next section, I will go more in depth about these Goldilocks goals, but for now, just keep the concept in your head. So essentially the way to optimize for time in a work perspective is to essentially just not focus on the time itself. Just focus on the goals that you have to do and work towards those goals and complete them, right? Those daily goals that I'm about to talk about in this next section. Section 2, optimize for leverage. So leverage is essentially how much input you have for your output. Now, if we want to optimize our work, we must know about what characterizes a high leverage task and a low leverage task. A high leverage task essentially gives you more output than input, asymmetrically in favor of the input side. It will look something like this, where you could put a little work in and get a lot of progress in return. The direct opposite of this is a low leverage task, asymmetrically in favor of the output, which will look more like this, where you're putting in a lot of work but you're not really getting anything out of it. Leverage is determined by specificity. Remember this. What does this mean? Well, essentially it means the more specific a certain task is to your goal, the highest leverage it will be. Basically, the law of specificity, which states the body adapts to the type and amount of physical activity it's exposed to, means that if a basketball player wants to get better at basketball, the best thing he can do is play basketball. So let's put this idea of specificity into self-improvement. Let's say you want an aesthetic body, right? That's one of your goals. Which would be more higher leverage? Going to the gym and working out hard, or doing a cold plunge? I'll give you some time. Okay, time's up. You probably picked going to the gym, and I hope you did. If you thought about what I said about specificity, you would probably conclude that the gym would be the higher leverage task because it's more specific to your goals of getting an aesthetic body. So if we want to optimize for leverage, we must focus all our time and energy on the highest leverage tasks. So how exactly do you find the highest leverage task? Well, first, identify your goal. What is your goal that you want to achieve? After you identify your goal, I need you to ask yourself, what things do I need to do to achieve this goal? And don't just say like anything. Say the main things. Let's say I want to get straight A's. The highest leverage task I can do is study, go to school, do like the homework and assignments they give you. Because if I don't do those things, I can't get straight A's. Or maybe it's business. The highest leverage tasks maybe are making a product, getting customers, and selling to those people. Because without these tasks, you don't have a business, right? This is what a business is. You make a product or make something, you sell it to people, and basically that's it. You find your highest leverage task by asking that question of what do I need to do? And if I don't do this, I can't achieve this goal. And whatever you have the answer to that question are your highest leverage task. Now, after you find your highest leverage task, I want you to basically make Goldilocks goals that only relate to those things, nothing else, because nothing else matters but these things in terms of your goals. So all Goldilocks goals should have your highest leverage task. What else should it have? It should relate to your skill level. If you're a beginner in the gym, your goal and style of training won't be similar to the goals and style of training of a person that's been to the gym for 10 years, right? When you're a beginner, you still got to learn how to properly do exercises, so that should be your main goal, properly doing exercises, whereas the guy that's 10 years in is worried about basically down to the last rep, what he should do, what exercises, how he should switch his exercises around, how he should switch his split around, what other things he can do, new exercises he can implement to try to get that 1 extra pound of muscle a year, right? So you have two completely different goals, right? If you're a beginner in business, you wouldn't be doing what a person that's a billionaire would be doing because you're not at his level yet. If you don't even have a product made yet, you shouldn't be trying to hire employees. That makes no sense, right? So make sure your Goldilocks goals relate to your skill level. And I'm going to put an example of my Goldilocks goals here so you can have basically a better understanding of what I'm talking about. And to be honest, you know what your skill level is. You know if you just started, you're a complete beginner. If you kind of have some experience and you're intermediate, or you're really into this thing and you're advanced. You're probably not advanced if you're watching this video, right? Because I kind of do beginner self-improvement kind of stuff. So you're probably beginner, maybe intermediate. So while you're writing down your Goldilocks goals, just ask yourself, would a beginner or intermediate and advanced person do this in my field? And field essentially just means if you want an aesthetic body, your field would be fitness. If it's 10K a month, your field would be business. If it's straight A's, your field would be academics. So basically the field is the broader concept that your goal is attached to. Another thing to take into account for these Goldilocks goals is time. How much time do you have to work on these goals? For example, I'm scripting this, right, on a Monday, but Monday I have school, right? And school takes a big chunk of my day, 8:30 to 2:50, right? That's a huge chunk of my day. This doesn't even take into account the time I have to commute to like there and back, right? So I wake up at 4 and I start leaving for school at around 7:20ish. So I have about a 3-hour block of work to do what I need to do. But on the weekends, I'm free. And naturally, my Goldilocks goals during the weekends will be harder because I have more time. So they're going to be more time consuming and be basically harder because I actually have the time to do them now instead of when I'm like, it's a school day, right? I just don't have the time to be doing something that's like a big project, but I can always have that. I can always do that big project on the weekends. Reason why? Because I actually have the time to do it now. So basically, the less time you have, the less things you do. But the more times you have, the more things you do. So in order to optimize for leverage, find your highest leverage tasks and focus only on your highest leverage tasks. Section 3, optimize focus. Focus is essentially how much attention you put into a certain thing. The less focused you are, the less attention you are putting on it, meaning you won't make progress on that thing. If you want to optimize focus, you must get into a flow state fast. Get rid of distractions and make work more fun. Let's start with getting into a flow state. If you want to be focused while doing work, you need to get into a flow state fast. If you have ever worked in the early hours like me, like right now it's about like 5 a.m., right? But I start my work at 4:30. Right, those early hours, you know that it takes a little time for you to actually get into a flow state because since it's so early, it takes you about like 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes to actually wake up and then another 10 to actually get into that flow state and actually start progressing on that, task that you want to be doing. And I count this for just not having an outline, right? Because if you have an outline on what you're going to do with that task, you will get into that flow state much easier. For example, if I had an outline on what I was going to do for the script, I would have been in a flow state way easier. Like, for example, for the scripting, I could have put an outline of the main points, right? Just bullet points of like the main points I want to talk about in the video, and then I can build my script off those bullet points. Right? And this will allow me to get into that flow faster. And as a result of being in this flow state, I can get the script done way faster and probably have even better script, right? So I can have a better script and get it done faster. That sounds like a win to me. If it was for recording a video, before recording, ask yourself, what's the type of energy? What is the key points I want the viewer to take when they're finished with this video? Even in the gym, having a workout plan with the sets, rest times, will allow you to not dilly-dally and do random shit in the gym like those little kids, right? They just go on machines with no real intention. So a way to stay more focused is having an outline and having that attention. Just a couple small things that will help you start the process easier, which will get you in that flow. Next is distractions. The main distractions that people have during work are family/friends, their own mind, and their phone. To stop family and friends from distracting you during work, like just work really early in the morning while they're asleep. But you can also tell them not to distract you during these times, right? Let's say, oh, don't distract me during 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm working. Because now when you're working at those times, they're going to be more conscious of it and they'll stop themselves from distracting you. Because a lot of times they don't really mean it, right? Because they don't know. But if you just basically vocalize, okay, I'm working these hours, they're going to like start having it in their mind and they're going to be like, okay, he's working, I shouldn't like mess with him right now. Next is your mind. Now I want to say this, work feels like meditation. If you have ever meditated, you will know that sometimes your mind wanders, but you catch yourself back. Meditation should go like this. You're focusing on your breath, right? The thing you're supposed to. Then suddenly you're focused on something completely different. But when you catch yourself, you focus back on the breath again, and the cycle repeats. Same thing with work. You focus on the work, the thing you're supposed to be working on, right? Is the thing you're supposed to be focusing on, my bad. And then your mind wanders, right? Maybe you think of like something else, right? And you're stressed about something else. You get distracted, you stop working for a bit, but then you catch yourself back and you work again. It's literally exactly like meditation. And if you were listening to what I mentioned in the highest leverage task section, you would know that the more specific something is to the task, the higher leverage it is. Well, this is a full circle moment. If you want to become more focused and you stop your mind from distracting you, meditate. Right? I'm going to start meditating again, right? But basically all you really have to do is just meditate for 10 minutes. That's kind of it, really. But you could meditate for more, like you could meditate for an hour if you want to, but I say the minimum for you to actually really get the results is 10 minutes a day, right? I'm gonna try to boost mine up to 20 minutes a day, right? Right now I'm only doing 10 minutes, but eventually I'll get to that 20-minute mark. And yeah, so basically, if you want to basically stop your mind from distracting you, just meditate for 10 minutes a day. Another way to stop your mind from distracting you is your diet. Eating processed junk and sugar gives you brain fog. I'm not saying that you have to have the best diet, right? I'm just saying that you should stop eating cakes, cookies, drinking sugar, juices, soda, every other processed thing there is, greasy foods, right? I'm not saying completely cut them out, but just lower your intake by like a lot, by like 90% probably. And if you want to be more focused in work, completely cutting out these processed sugar drinks or severely cutting them out will basically really help you. It'll help you just be more focused and more sharp. Because let's be honest, that 30 grams of sugar, added sugar in that cake or like soda isn't going to help you focus on this work, on this mentally demanding task, right? And for phones, this is self-explanatory. Don't work with your phone next to you. Throw it in another room or keep it out your sight. Be a D&D princess. Turn off notifications. It's that simple. So now you know how to get rid of distractions, and now it's time to make the work more fun. Now, it's not what you think. It's not making the work feel like a game. You're not necessarily going to make the work more fun. You're going to make it the most fun thing you can do, in the sense that you're going to cut out all other instant gratification activities like porn, YouTube, or junk food. Because honestly, the work can never be more fun than those things. Let's be honest here. That deep work, scripting, recording that video will never be more fun than jacking off or binging YouTube while eating chips. But if we cut these things out, the things that are more fun than the work, then the work will be the only thing left. And it will seem more fun than it actually is, because it's the only thing that's really giving us that dopamine boost, right? Because we aren't really doing anything more fun than it. Since now the work kind of seems more fun, we'll think about it more and we will want to do more of it. Well, that's all I have for you for today. I wish you luck on your journey, and peace.